Hey guys, Mr. Frosty Flames here, and today we are doing a first impressions video on Resident Evil Requiem. So I played about, I'd say just under 2 hours worth of gameplay. I got to play both Grace and Leon, and I'd like to give my thoughts on what I've played so far. I fully intend to do a full review on this game once I get close to 100% completion of the game. I will be playing this game multiple times. I will be doing a story mode analysis and all the stuff that is yet to come for this game that I've played. So I went into this blind. I watched some of the trailers for this game, but I didn't really dive deep into the story or the lore of what this game was about. I know everything on a base level. And from what I'd like to say, I was thoroughly impressed for my first 2 hours of experiencing Resident Evil Requiem, and I'd like to share it with you. So let's begin. And the first thing I want to talk about is the story. Now, me being 2 hours in, I haven't fully experienced the story, but from what I could say right now, it did a good job of hooking me in. There is a flashback scene that, gives you a bit of context on Grace's past. A little bit for Leon, it's a little ambiguous for him, but I'd say the first 2 hours definitely focuses on Grace and making the player bond with her and getting to know her. And I feel like in a majority of the 2 hours that I played, I'd say about an hour 30 minutes of it was playing as Grace. Now, the premise that I got so far was that there's this scientist that was ex-Umbrella named Victor Gideon, and he is sort of like a mad scientist, and he is infecting people with this like a syringe gun, and it's turning these people into like zombified creatures, though they seem to have some sense of humanity to them. They're not just full-on zombies. They could think on their own, and it seems that they are a little bit smarter than zombies. But other than that, that's where I'm at on the story wise. I don't want to spoil too much, but I could definitely go into it on my full review that's going to come out once I 100% the game. But as of right now, I could say that it does a good job of hooking me in and keeping me interested. I legit didn't want to stop playing the game to make this first impressions video, but I felt like I wanted to do this first impressions video, so I was like, oh man, I gotta force myself to stop, but I did want to play. It was interesting to me. And on a side note, what I have to say and I have to commend right now is that Grace's voice actress is phenomenal. You could hear the fear in her voice when, things go to shit. And I'll play some clips for you, but you could hear the stutter in their voice. And a lot of times in these horror games, I don't really hear much fear portrayed by the character. You would hear some like gasping or something like that, but people forget that when you're scared, a lot of times people shake, they stutter, stuff like that. And I guess it is modern media where everybody wants to speak clearly and be heard clearly, so voice actors and media are afraid to give that fearful tone because it sounds off-putting. But I think she does an amazing job at it. I'll play some clips right now.
Hello? Yes, I want to report a murder. No murders. Grace. Yes. The Renwood Hotel. Yes. Hurry, please. The police are on their way. Oh, God. Oh, I feel like I'm going to throw up.
Grace. Grace, look at me. Grab my hands. Okay, look at me. Look at me.
What do I do?
So I want to talk about also how the gameplay is split up. So you could either choose to play this game in first person or third person. I just chose third person for both Grace and Leon, although the game recommends that you play Grace in first person and Leon in third person, and let me explain why. So the game is split up into multiple sections where you would either be playing as Grace or Leon, and Grace typically has the more survival horror elements, and Leon has more of the action-y elements. But to be honest, I felt myself enjoying Grace's gameplay more than Leon's, and that is because when you play as Grace, it feels like a horror game. It feels like Resident Evil, and I'm not saying the action is not Resident Evil. We had one of the best action Resident Evil games of all time, Resident Evil 4, but I felt myself enjoying, the survival horror elements just a little bit more than the action elements, and that's just my personal preference. Now with Leon, there will be a lot of shooting and kicking. You could, do what you did in Resident Evil 4, like shoot the enemy in the head and then run up to him and do like a roundhouse kick to then knock the enemy on the ground, stab him with his hatchet. You start with a gun, whereas Grace has mostly those stalker type areas where you're going through a section and there'll be an enemy following you and you gotta solve puzzles to proceed. I enjoyed that a little bit more, but I'm not saying the Leon sections were bad, but I enjoyed Grace's survival horror elements better than Leon's actiony elements. So there were two sides to this Resident Evil fan base. You had the fans that loved the survival horror elements, more like, me, like the classic Resident Evils, the horror aspects, Resident Evil 0, 1, 2, 3. And then you had the fans that love the actiony Resident Evils. I mean, it's fewer, but they're there, Resident Evil 4, amazing game. It's one of the best actiony survival horror games ever, right? You have that game, and then you have the people that loved 5, and then you have the 3 people that love 6, right? Resident Evil 7 sort of revitalized the franchise and made it more into horror, in my opinion, with the first-person mode. Resident Evil 8 was first-person as well, but it was more actiony. And now we have Resident Evil 9. And what it did is it took the best of both worlds. It took the best survival horror elements and it took the best actiony elements and it combined it into one game in a perfect way. When you play as Grace, it is scary. It is horror. When you play as Leon, you're a badass. You're Leon. When you play as Leon, Leon doesn't get scared. He's been through a lot and he's developed as a character so much that there's no reason for Leon to be in a horror game and be scared, and that's why this works. Now going back to the survival horror elements that I loved, there weren't times where I was scared, and me as a person, I don't really get scared in games. Jump scares don't really scare me. I could get startled once in a while, but call me Moist Critical, because I know he never gets scared. I'm the same way, but there were times where the tension was there. As you can see on the screen, I'm playing an area of the game, and I'll play a clip that actually did startle me, and that's kind of rare for games, and I don't know if I was just into it or something, but I actually did get startled by one of the sections in the first 2 hours. And as Leon, there's also these badass moments. There's a part of the game where I was able to pick up a chainsaw and just like mow the zombies down. It was pretty cool. So since this is a first impressions video, I just want to keep things short, under 10 minutes. But I will say graphically, I didn't have any issues. I have a good PC, so I was able to run things on pretty much the highest settings if I wanted to, but I kind of tried to balance it out, and performance wise, I didn't have any issues. Everything was fine. I feel like gameplay, everything is very impressive so far, and if you feel like you're interested in Resident Evil, I say go for it. The first 2 hours kind of blew me away, so I say that if you're a fan of Resident Evil or a fan of survival horror or even a fan of action horror games, then this could be the game for you. If you need more time to think about it, I say check out some other reviews, or wait a little bit longer. I'll put out a main review, but as of right now, I say that it is worth it if you're gonna play it and if you're gonna enjoy these type of games. But if not, it is a shorter game, as typical Resident Evil games are, shorter than usual. If you're looking at it from value, it is a $70 game, so you just got to beware with that. And usually these stories, I'm not sure on the exact length, but usually Resident Evil games are no longer than 20 hours. So if you're looking at it from length to money ratio, I don't think the value is there. But if you're looking at it as a Resident Evil game and you know what you're getting into, I say it's one of the better ones from what I played so far, and you should definitely go and get it. Now, that's it for my first impressions video. If you liked what you saw today, please comment, subscribe, and let me know down below if you're gonna get Resident Evil 9, if you already bought it, or what your thoughts on it so far. And please look forward to my main review coming out, and let me know what other content you would like to see me post in the future. Mr. Frosty Flames out.